The Grand Canyon has been a place that has awed and mystified humans ever since its discovery. Through decades of professional study, there's much we have learned about the canyon. And yet, perhaps just as much still remains shrouded in mystery. The archaeological record shows evidence of a civilization thriving in the canyon about 1,000 years ago. As quickly as they arose, they seemed to disappear. What happened? Who were they, and where did they go? For the next 4 days, I'll be backpacking deep into this natural wonder to explore this story and some of the mysteries still surrounding it. Hey everybody, it's Andrew from Desert Drifter. Thanks for tuning in. So my friend Josh is joining me on this trip. There he is.
Howdy.
So we started a little over an hour ago, way back down there. We've already climbed up about 3 miles, maybe 1,500 feet of vert. So let me show you guys where we're at right now, up on the rim. So eventually today, we're gonna end up somewhere way down here. You can just make out the tops of some green cottonwood trees down there. So we've got our work cut out for us. We're going about 10 miles today. 10 miles in of itself isn't anything crazy, but a Grand Canyon mile is not the same as a mile someplace else. I don't mean that literally. It's not like there's a different type of measurement, but it's just the level of difficulty of terrain and elevation change in a mile in the Grand Canyon is really unlike most other places in the country and probably the world too. The Grand Canyon is enormous. It's impossible to comprehend unless you've seen it in person and traveled its depths. It's larger than 2 US states and numerous foreign countries. So where we're at right now on the northeast side of the Grand Canyon, we're about 7,500 feet above sea level. So what that means is, it's probably, low 60s right now. We're in a pinyon pine and ponderosa pine forest. I'll show you in a second. There's actually snow in places up here. We're gonna climb all the way down, right, from here, about 6,000 feet down, and we're gonna get temperatures in the low 90s today. And so those massive temperature swings, if you don't understand that and you don't come prepared for that, that's one of the big killers out here. Okay, we're back on the trail. Took just a short break up top there, get a little intro, get you guys oriented. Got a lot of miles today, so we gotta keep pushing. I caution you, do not attempt what you're about to see unless you have significant backpacking experience in the desert. Every year, the National Park Service has to help hundreds of hikers and backpackers who overestimate their abilities and underestimate the Grand Canyon. The Grand Canyon will absolutely astound you, but it can kill you just as quickly. Like nearly all trails in the Grand Canyon, the one we're hiking is an old Native American route. How long have people lived in or used the Grand Canyon? We don't know for sure, but the best guess is somewhere between 10 to 12,000 years. This estimate is a result of a projectile point found in the canyon. This style of point has been linked to the Paleo-Indian hunter-gatherers who once roamed this landscape. So there's where we ate lunch. Just kind of wanted to try to put in perspective what we're seeing, because it's just, we jokingly call it the big ditch, but it's just a huge area that's really hard to fathom and wrap your mind around. Over here, right, we're looking at kind of a section of what would be considered the North Rim. So the North Rim generally sits in higher elevation than the South Rim. When people come and visit, Grand Canyon National Park, generally most of them go to the South Rim. If we had X-ray vision and we could just look through, this whole section of canyon and X-ray vision about 25 miles away from here. The South Rim infrastructure is all kind of like over here. Okay, back on trail again. So many different layers of rock in the Grand Canyon, and geologically speaking, each one tells a different story. The shadows are definitely growing longer down there. The trail drops down, there's a little cairn there, drops down and it gets real steep real quick. And we're gonna drop a lot of elevation, eventually wind up somewhere down there. Look at this helicopter flying overhead. It's one of the scenic tours. This is, can we see anybody up there? Just to put in perspective how small that thing is out here. Look at that. Teeny tiny helicopter. Puts in perspective how big this place is. And right on the other side, got our first glimpse of the Colorado River. See it way down there? It's where we're gonna be, not that exact spot, but that vicinity tomorrow. Here's Josh up here, looking all hiker aesthetic. What do you think of this trip, Josh?
Easy so far.
I laughed because we had been taking our sweet time, just enjoying being in a beautiful place. But the shadows brought a new sense of urgency, so we doubled down to get to the creek before dark. Descending the steepest and loosest section of trail, we pushed on until we found a good camp spot. The creek bottom at long last. Well, we're cooking up a little mac and cheese tonight. We got a little toad running through our camp here. Okay, tonight sauteed up some veggies and some already cooked, like pre-cooked bacon stuff from the store, and some mac and cheese. Gonna combine that. Oh, bro! Well, good morning. We're on the move again. We had a pretty slow morning around camp, just enjoying the cottonwoods and the creek. But now we're headed down to the river, which is about 3 miles away and is the ultimate destination. So I'm excited. Now alongside the creek, life seemed to be teeming all around us. Mule deer, frogs, fish, butterflies, tadpoles. Everything was out this morning, welcoming us to this desert oasis. It would be easy in a place like this to be so engrossed by the beauty that you'd miss the human story hidden between these walls. The closer we got to the river, the closer we got to the heart of a prehistoric civilization. The Grand Canyon and the Colorado River. Man, they never cease to amaze. So this is the big drainage we came down. The confluence is kind of right down in that area. There's the Colorado River. So I'm up above the creek and the river, kind of on this spit of land that like juts out from the main cliff bands behind me. So this is the view to one side. I mean, talk about epic. And here's the other direction. And so again, just to give you kind of orientation, came down, dropped packs right up there. Now undoubtedly the most dramatic of it all, check these out. 1,000-year-old granaries perched up on this big band of limestone. So we're gonna get to that in a second. But first I wanna show you guys what's down here and talk about some of the archaeological excavations that they did here in the 1960s. Because without really realizing it, we've just walked into basically the heart of a thriving little civilization that was...
Let me jump in here and zoom out to try and give you a bigger picture of what we're about to explore. We've already established the Grand Canyon has seen human habitation for thousands of years. Truthfully, we know relatively little about the ancient peoples here. The best estimate I could find was that only 5% of archaeological sites in the canyon have been professionally surveyed. The amount that have been excavated would be even less. That statistic alone shows how much more we may discover in the coming years. Although there's a lot to learn, we're not completely clueless either. It appears most of the early people lived a nomadic lifestyle, leaving little trace of their passing in the Grand Canyon. We start to see that shift 1,000 years ago, give or take a century or two. Agriculture was now a part of the Southwest, and more permanent settlements arose. Here, where the creek and river join, we have come to the remnants of one of those.
So you can see better from this angle. You've got a wall that would have run over there, connecting here, and coming along back to where I'm standing. Then it seems like also coming off, there's a separate wall. In terms of size, I'd probably estimate it about 30 feet by 15 feet. And it seems like it was also probably divided in half there. Undoubtedly, these are manos, which are basically, grinding stones. Mano comes from Spanish word for hand, because you would take these and you would grind, corn and grains and things using your hand, and then you would have what's also called a metate. Oh, speaking of which, I actually didn't realize this is clearly one of those. So you can see how this has been smoothed out. This is definitely not naturally that smooth. But these would have been used on a platform like this to grind corn, other seeds, things like that. So there's the foundations we just looked at, and you can tell, right, you've got a very commanding view both to the right side and the left side.
Let's talk agriculture. This community was clearly farming. Why here? The belief is that the confluence of this creek and river formed a sort of delta, where periodic floods deposited more nutrient-rich sediment in the bottomland. That, coupled with irrigation, made this area livable, at least for a time.
Even with the abundance of water here, you look at this landscape, and for anybody who's farmed or has any, you've ever gardened, imagining growing crops out here is still probably pretty hard to fathom. Okay, so now we are going to start the climb, maybe 500 feet or so, up to the granaries overlooking all of this. So when you're living down in this region and you're farming stuff like this, as well as over on the other side, then why do you store it all way up there? Let's get up there and examine that question closer.
I mentioned the archaeological study done here in the 60s. While I hike, let me summarize their findings. In their words, there was a short but intense period of occupation here from about 1050 to 1150 AD. This chart shows their population estimates. The population skyrockets, then about a century later, it plummets. Why?
Slowly getting closer. All right, my friends, at long last, here we are. Let's just take it in for a second. I mean, the view is unmatched. This is the 4th time I visited these, and it just never ceases to amaze. So I'm right below the main cluster. Just to take a look down there, there's the river bottom. There's the confluence we came out of. There's where the other ruin site was. Okay, so there's this little one detached from the main 4. So the ones up here, because they are much more sheltered, are in much better shape. So if you're looking at these structures and you're like, okay, clearly it's a building, but for what? Did people live in them? They're so small. We call these granaries. And it's kind of a catch-all term that's basically, think of it as a storage unit. But these little storage units didn't only store grain like corn. There's been evidence of them storing like piñon nuts and ollas full of water and pottery, and basically just think about it as like anything needed for survival would have been stashed and cached in these little structures. There's still the original wood in some of these. These have long been empty. That 1960s report that I read said that when they did come up here then, they still found some corn cobs in these. Appears like there was probably a 5th one down here given this little wall over here, but I guess time has taken its toll. Okay, so we've seen this first set up here. Let's walk this ledge and go check out that other group. There's Josh, the faithful photographer. So, just climbed up on this little ledge. Honestly, the surface area in here is probably the same as all 4 of those others combined. So here's the outside wall. Notice, look up there. You got those like finger swipes, coming in on the mortar. And the fingerprints. So there's one more granary above this one. It's pretty tricky to get up to, but Josh has the camera and the selfie stick, and he's getting some good footage of that. So it'd be cool to take a look at that when we get home.
One of the mysteries around this structure is what was the reason for the 2 wooden beams coming out of it. At first, my guess was they were for a pulley system, or possibly supports to rest a ladder on. But on closer examination, the beams don't extend out over the cliff, which made me second guess my theory. Could they be the remnants of a platform that used to extend out in front of the granary?
Okay, so we're gonna walk along this ledge and go check that final cave out.
The cave was more or less empty. There's this rock stack in the middle, but I would imagine it's from river rafters in the modern day. There might have been the remnants of a wall in the corner. I couldn't tell for sure. Was this cave used in ancient times? Given its location, it seems likely, but for what? Couldn't tell you.
So when I was down there before I started hiking up, I think I said something like, these look like they're 500-600 feet up. I actually looked closer on the topographic map on my phone, and these are about 800 feet above the canyon bottom and where the other ruins were, where they would have been farming. It's a significant climb to get up here. And so of course the question is why? Why up here?
Let's start off with what we do know. These types of structures aren't unique to the Grand Canyon. Throughout the Southwest, you will find ancient ruins that make you ask how and why. Many of these structures, these included, were built by a group of people we have come to call the ancestral Puebloan. Undoubtedly, there is more distinction amongst them about their identity, but we don't fully understand it. I mentioned this was the 4th time I had visited these granaries. Why do I keep coming back? Some of it is undoubtedly the view, but there's something deeper. They challenge my initial assumptions I had when I first ventured into the Grand Canyon years ago. At the time, I assumed the only reason people would live in such a marginal environment was for defensive purposes, meaning the inner canyon is so rugged and difficult to access that I assumed it would provide a natural defense for people to live in peace. Yet if that was the case, why would you build up here? Maybe the pressures from the outside were too great, or maybe the threats came from within. Had things grown so difficult that people were raiding their neighbors up and down the canyon? Or maybe people didn't settle here to escape something. Maybe the climate was right, and it was prosperous for a time. This area was abandoned shortly before 1200 AD. It's interesting to note that other areas in the Southwest follow a similar timetable. Whatever the reason or cataclysmic event that caused the abandonment in the Southwest, the Grand Canyon doesn't seem immune from it. There's more questions than answers, and that's probably what keeps me coming back. I got a ton of footage from this trip, so I plan to release an extended cut version in the coming days. It'll have more archaeological insight, geography, geology, wildlife, scenery, basically everything. If you enjoyed this video, stay tuned for that one.
Thanks for joining me on this trip, guys. It's really been fun to get to show you an area that has had such an impact upon my life and a specific spot that just continues to capture my imagination. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up. If you want to keep exploring the Southwest with me, hit subscribe.